Hey guys, how's it going? Miles here at Tactile Hyve. We get asked a lot, there's a lot of people who know that when it comes to self-defense and protection of yourself and others, that there's more to it than shooting. I mean, it's unfortunate that in America, depending who you talk to, fortunate, unfortunate, but I think it's unfortunate where in America, we're a big shooting culture, where when it comes to self-defense, everyone falls back to their sidearm, whether they're carrying a pistol or maybe a rifle, whatever it might be. But I feel that is limiting yourself a lot because as you see a lot of real life altercations, everything starts off hand to hand in a dynamic nature in a disruptive environment, and you need to know how to handle that. So it's not just about learning how to shoot, how to use a gun. You need to know hand to hand combat. You need to know how to deal with edge weapons. More importantly, you need to know how to use your mind and really be aware of different things. So when we get this question, how do I get into hand-to-hand? I know I need to get more involved. I need to know more than just shooting. What do I do? Where should I start? And so I'm going to answer this differently from others. And this is because of my background, knowing what street fights are like overseas, here in the US. And also, might give you a different answer because their upbringing, their skill level, their experience is different. But also the reason why I have a unique take is I am not going to push you into any specific styles per se because I don't believe there's one style that's best. And also there are certain things in every style that are good for self-defense and could actually be bad or detrimental, right? So I'm not gonna get into all those details, but I will say this, that when you are first diving into this, you don't have to think about learning a style, going all the way through it to become a black belt or anything like that. I recommend as a starting point, particularly those in America, and if you live in America here, boxing, just traditional Western boxing and Greco-Roman wrestling. All right, Greco-Roman wrestling versus freestyle wrestling will give you a good foundation that can help you fend off actual people that you get into a hand-to-hand confrontation with, but it'll also give you the ability and advantage of learning to tie up with people. This is the Greco-Roman wrestling, tying up with people, being able to create space so that you can get to your weapon if you need to. So those two are very easy in the sense that boxing, you're just going to be using your hands. You've used this all the time, so it's not complicated where you're trying to learn grappling moves on the ground, learn knees or kicks or anything like that. So you don't have to worry about that in the beginning. And believe me, you can go very, very far with just good boxing and good Greco-Roman wrestling, where you can take people down, you can make space, and get your weapon. Now, if you met a really good trained fighter, yes, things are going to be different. But the truth is, in general, most people here actually most people in the world, they really don't know hand-to-hand, so you can go a long way. So Western boxing and Greco-Roman wrestling are going to really be a good start. They're going to give you a good foundation. Now, there's a lot more to learn when it comes to hand-to-hand or just combatives in general, right? So boxing and Greco-Roman will get you only so far. So the realities of fighting, you are most likely going to go to the ground, you might push someone to the ground or something, that ground element's going to happen. Now, does that mean you need to learn a new art and get into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or mixed martial arts and learn everything? Not necessarily the case. So very first things you need to, so since you're doing Greco-Roman, if you pick up Greco-Roman, you'll know how to handle yourself in grappling range, close quarters combat range inside, all right, without a weapon. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or any other grappling art is going to help you when you're on the ground. Now, the main thing is this. When we talk about real street fights, the chances are you are going to find yourself on the ground or somebody's going to be on the ground. Now that's a place you don't want to be. So when it comes to training grappling, when we're talking about street fights or self-defense, now we're not talking about sport orientation here. You want to be able to learn to get up quickly and not stay on the ground. Now, that's not that simple, right? Meaning, if you hit the ground, someone's probably going to fall on top of you, someone's going to be punching, someone's going to be kicking, something is going to be happening. They're just not going to let you get up in most situations. So you need to learn how to defend yourself while getting up. And then also you gotta learn how to deal with if somebody heavy is on you or someone is trying to force you down and trying to keep you down, how do you get up? The worst situation you wanna be in is where you're down on the ground and there are multiple people you have to deal with. That's the last situation or last place you wanna be because you will be in a world of hurt. So you need to learn how to get up right away. So clearly, there's a lot of things to learn when it comes to ground fighting, all right? And so we're not trying to discredit any of that. But I want to talk to you in a more practical manner. If you don't have a lot of time, there's a limited amount of time in a day, right? And a lot of us have other things to do. So if you need to prioritize, when we're talking about the groundwork, learn how to get up and learn how to get off of your back so you can stand up, right? If somebody is on top of you. So that's the grappling component, right? So now there's a lot more to it, but we're just prioritizing here. So you have 3 things thus far. You have boxing, you have Greco-Roman wrestling, and then we're not even talking about a grappling art here, it's just learning. You could take private lessons, learn how to get up right away if you fall on the ground, and then learn how to deal with getting up from the ground if someone is trying to keep you there. So the next thing we have to deal with is edged weapons. Similar to grappling, if we're talking about self-defense here, we don't want to throw on learning another art on top of us. We'd be responsible for taking the time to do that. There's just not enough time in a day, right? So instead of thinking about, okay, what knife fighting style should I learn? Don't think that way. When it comes to, again, self-defense, just like with grappling, there are certain things that are more important. Now, with the knife, there are certain things that you need to understand in terms of awareness and familiarity, right? So I say that because a knife can be very small and it can be disguised. And if you watch a lot of real life knife encounters and fights, it happens very fast. Usually the victim does not even know the person had a knife, all right? So awareness is so important. Now familiarity is where you also want to start too, because it's very difficult dealing with a knife or edged weapon if you're not comfortable dealing with that weapon or handling it or being close to someone handling it. Just like when you first started using a pistol, you were probably nervous and you see people shake. In the same way, when people are confronted with an edged weapon, they react similarly. It's because they're not familiar with that weapon system. So first things first is start kind of learning more about it and actually getting involved with, handling the knife, and don't be afraid of it. After that, I would not recommend getting into a specific style. If you can do private lessons with a knife fighting coach, that's great. But this is where you want to ask them specific questions and learn specific things. And every instructor and every style might be a little different, but that's great because you want to learn from a lot of different people. And what you want to learn is general flows. Now, almost every knife fighting style is going to have some kind of flow, like hubud or some kind of I hate to say the word, but kata, some kind of controlled flow. Now, the reason why I think this is important is because it's going to ingrain that weapon's familiarity, get you comfortable, get you confident with the knife. It's not going to be specific techniques or tactics that you can use right away, but it's going to, if you get a trainer, you want to do some knife fighting, that flow is going to get you familiar. Now, when we start talking about techniques, this is where you want to focus, I wouldn't focus on offensive techniques, all right? You want to focus on defensive techniques that will allow you to get your weapon, all right? Now, when we talk about defensive techniques, it depends on what the person is doing with the edge weapon. You might need to control that weapon first and then create space while controlling the weapon, then get your pistol, all right? Because then once again, we are shooters here. We're not trying to be knife fighters, all right? So I would not even recommend getting into knife fighting. No, this is integrated combatives. Learn how to be comfortable with the knife, then learn how to defend against the knife just enough to get your weapon, controlling that knife. You're not trying to do disarms in movies, which hardly ever work, right? And you're not trying to be offensive with a knife. There's a time and place to do that where you can use, if you had your own knife, to create space, but I wouldn't worry about that. So once again, develop some comfortable or some confidence with the weapon system. You can do that by doing some private lessons where almost every knife fighting system, there's going to be some kind of flow. Again, it's kind of like a kata, choreographed movements, but again, builds familiarity. From there, learn some basic defenses that will allow you to control the weapon. Then from there, create space so that you can grab your pistol and get to work. So that's it. Those are my recommendations in terms of what to prioritize if you are just getting into hand-to-hand and edge weapons right now. It will make your approach a little bit more efficient in the sense that you're not wasting time on different things, but also it will give you the basics, the foundation to actually build on top of. So if you really like it, then you can actually do more and build on top of a good, solid foundation. Hope you guys like it.